opera is the plural of opus. Opus is Latin for work. So opera means works, as simple as that. It is essentially something which is sung. It is sung by a range of voices, from bass voices right through to the highest sopranos, and it's invariably something to do with drama. So there'll be a dramatic story or maybe even a comic story. But an opera is a sung work. It may also have some dialogue. For example, the Magic Flute, which is an opera which is sung in German and has dialogue to link it together.
I know everything, but you will see how I am revenged on your mother. In diesen heiligen Haaren kennt man die Rachen je.
If we look at the medieval miracle play as the beginning of opera, that's probably a reasonable assumption to make. That what happened was composers, whom we really don't know their names, took biblical themes and they turned these themes into plays. And the idea of the play was to teach the congregation something about the religious aspect of the story and the moral of the story. So drama was seen as a way of getting information across to a population. Now, this obviously became really very entertaining, and in its secular form, it became vaudeville or street theatre with travelling players, and then as this evolved, it became Baroque opera around 1607-ish, where we start to find a group of noblemen called the Camerata in Florence getting together and deciding they'd like to write stories with music based on Greek themes. And so we start to look at a circumstance where the idea of telling a story with music now becomes a very important part of the history of music. And this moves through to the highly evolved Baroque opera. Gluck came along and reformed all this and said, we're over the da capo arias, we don't want these long ornamental scenes. We're going back to the Greeks and we're going to cut everything down. So Gluck was a reformer. This led to Mozart, Weber, Beethoven, and the reason for mentioning Beethoven, his one opera is an extraordinary example of a classical composer's view of drama. The great Mozart operas, the four big operas, Figaro, Così fan tutte, Don Giovanni and the Magic Flute, all stand as extraordinary pinnacles in the operatic world. Then this moves through to Weber, who was also a reformer in Romantic music. And Weber set new rules about the way storytelling should evolve. And by now, opera was the popular music of the 19th century. You could say that opera was like the rap or the hip hop or the pop of 19th century. There were opera houses all over the place. People went to the opera on a nightly basis, and there are something like 60,000 operas in the repertoire from that period. This went through to Wagner, who then had further reforms, and he wanted to call it everything the combined art work. So that this combined art work was scenery, story, music, props, costumes, all rolled into one and all had significance. This moves through to Strauss, who also went back to Mozart to find ideas of storytelling. And then in England, Not since Purcell had there been any real operatic work. And suddenly comes along Benjamin Britten. And Britten was important, if we can use that fairly arrogant word, for establishing an English school of opera, which there had not been. So he wanted to write opera in English about English themes, using English singers, English librettists, etc. It was a very special way of establishing brand new English opera.
Tancred